Hello, nerds of the internet. How are you doing today? I am so delighted and happy to invite Todd Little in this particular episode of the Nerd Diary. I consider him as my guru in many of the things, and he has actually taught me a few things about agile, agility, and Kanban related stuff. Todd, welcome to the Nerd Diary.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. Thank you so much for taking time out on a Sunday morning to record this podcast. Guys, Todd is having more than 40 years of experience and he has done a lot of things. And some of them are really great, like, starting the Agile Alliance Conference and many other things. I will ask Todd to, please give some short introduction of himself.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I've been around for a long time. Started in as a developer. Actually, my background is originally in chemical engineering and petroleum engineering, and I was developing software products for the oil and gas industry, working with that, and that was great. And as I developed further along, I started getting involved in all sorts of becoming project manager, product manager, and then general management, leading departments. In you know decent sized departments, a VP of product development and delivery. I got involved in the Agile space partially by design, partially by accident. I mean, I got into the Agile space because I wanted to, but then I got into the Agile community by connecting up with Alistair Coburn, and we started the first Agile conference in 2003, the first Agile Alliance Agile conference in 2003. It was a great fun, and then that got me into the community and on a member of the Agile Alliance board of directors, and also was involved in founding the Agile Leadership Network. Alistair was also involved in that, Jim Highsmith as well. And then after my long career in oil and gas, I decided I had met David Anderson via the work we did with the Agile Leadership Network, and he was alerted to go on sabbatical and asked me to come on board to lead Kanban University. And so I've been doing that for the last 8 years. And then recently have left them and doing some things on my own, semi-retired, working in Costa Rica, doing some building a property in Costa Rica. So.
Wow, that's great. I when I came to know about Agile Alliance Conference started by you and Alistair Cochran, um, I mean, I was surprised myself because I went to a couple of Agile conferences, this Agile Alliance conference as a speaker, and I wasn't aware of that it was started by you guys way back in 2003. And yeah, it turned out to be great. I will say that because it turned out to be one of the most premier Agile conferences across the years. I think at least till COVID part when things went online. Before that, it was one of the conference every
Yeah.
Agile practitioner was looking forward to attend. And a week-long conference, that's something, not everybody can take time out, but it was there like that. And I think it was a really good thing you guys did, and we all reaped the benefit of that, I'll say so.
Yeah, when we started it, we were 300 people, and at the height of it before COVID, it was up to 2,500.
Mhm.
And when Alistair and I started it, we said, we think this has a 20-year life. So it's outlasted that a little bit. They just had the last version, Agile 2006, in Washington, D.C., 2 weeks back. And I was there to present. So it was great to see it. It's certainly down. It's only 800 people now, but it's still an
Mhm.
excellent event. And still a place to, I think it's been an important element of the Agile community to have that as a gathering place.
Right. So let's talk about the work we are doing as of today. Todd, I think we have seen a lot of changes over the period of time. I'm in this industry for around 25 years. We have seen starting with small things, then patterns emerges, then design patterns emerges, then agile emerged, then cloud emerged, then machine learning emerged, then AI emerged. I really like the idea which you guys have propagated about flow, that the way water flows, the way things should be flowing, and that's the best way of working. How are you seeing the flow today in this age of AI? What is that, you Have you thought that something like this will be there, will be coming, or how is it for you?
Yeah, so I think the you bring up a great point. The element of flow is always going to be there, and sometimes with water does strange things. Sometimes it goes all over the place, and I think we're a little bit of that state right now with AI, where flow is. So I think we have flow enabled or types of flow enabled, and people are still struggling with exactly what that means and how it works. And I think it will settle down. And I think once it settles down, um, it will largely revert to sort of the core principles that we've been aware of, which is we need to have a nice continuous flow. We need to have a design flow, and we need to have feedback loops in that flow, and feedback loops that provide us both feedback on product direction as well as feedback on process improvement. And those, to me, that's sort of the core of agility is getting a way of managing knowledge work so that it flows smoothly and we have corrections because the we know that we have uncertainty that we cannot resolve in advance. And AI doesn't necessarily change that. It just makes it all happen much faster,
Right.
and can be dealt with differently. I think many of the core things that you mentioned in our transition. I think another important one that has started fairly early and then has evolved has been DevOps. I think DevOps is going to be even more important in this age of AI because um, the one thing that DevOps acknowledged was we need to remove the bottleneck because there was a bottleneck at various stages. There were bottlenecks, and DevOps says, okay, let's make it smooth all the way through. Let's get flow going all the way through the system, and that's fundamentally fundamental to getting ultimate flow, which is in the product, getting the product in the customer's hands. So I think DevOps, I think the types of things we see there, uh, automation throughout the system, and very fast feedback loops that allow us to correct as needed. We know that AI is very fast at generating, can be very fast at generating things, very fast at generating prototypes, not always so fast at generating the final product.
Right.
There's a lot of challenges there. Will it get better? Yes, but I think I think people are still also learning the key elements of some of the XP practices, getting rigorous testing approaches in place to contain what is getting developed, so that we have a confidence. The only way you can go fast is if we know we have the right quality to do so, or we have a mechanism in place that gets quality built in eventually. So I think we're still struggling with what that looks like in an AI-enabled world. But I do think the concept that DevOps had, let's shift left, that's still happening. We need to shift left. Now we need to shift even further left into the product side of the world. So, but it's all about, I think, the fundamentals of flow, looking at where we're bottlenecked, looking at where we're stuck, and figuring out how to make that flow more smooth and also more effective through effective feedback loops that do the corrections to guide us towards not what we think people need, but what they actually need.
Right. Great points, Todd. So we talked about speed. So my next question is related to that. As you said, AI is increased the speed, right? It is like it's kind of Ferrari, right? It's very fast. But I of late I have heard the conversation whether this is a blessing or a kind of curse because I'll tell you the background of this question. Sometime back in Medium, I read a blog, and I think it is also reported on LinkedIn that one person said that with the Cloud Code, the person managed to build 4 apps, perfect apps. It was there in App Store with zero revenue, zero customers, and zero everything, right? So, you have the Ferrari to build a lot of things, but you are building things what you want to build, or you are building things just because you can do it. There is a difference between these two. What's your take?
So I think that well, AI has done another, in addition to going fast, it's also put the ability to generate code in the hands of a lot of people
Right.
with ideas. So we have a lot more, potentially a lot more products getting generated quickly, some of which are actually solving real problems, and some of which are ideas or things that might have sounded like a great product, a great need for the individual, but aren't necessarily solving a need for the masses. So I think what we see there is, getting back to what I said, even more of a shift towards the feedback loops that tell us, are these products actually useful or not? Are we building products that matter, or are we just building a lot of stuff and shoving things out on a store and nobody cares? So there's a little bit of a point that you say, okay, well, it's just a shotgun approach. I'm just going to throw 100 things out there and see if I hit something, right?
Right.
That can work. I think that there's going to be, what we're going to discover is that that's probably, I'm going to guess that's not going to be the route that we end up going. And the reason being is I think that we already know some very good techniques for product management that can help us. And if we augment those quite nicely with AI, and that means bringing AI into the product space. It also means bringing so not just the speed of delivery, but also some of the AI tooling can help us in the product space. If we can work that whole pipeline and get better at it, I think we can fine tune the targets much better, and that will be more efficient than the shotgun approach. In the meantime, we might see the shotgun approach, and you might have an occasional win because there's just so much stuff out there. But it's also going to be the danger with the shotgun approach is it's going to cause a lot of pollution. There'll be a lot of junk apps out there. It'll start giving some bad names to show. So you want to have products your customers love, and if 99 of them they don't like and they like one, it's going to have it's once they hit the bad one, they may never come back to you. So
Yep, that's absolutely correct. And also, I believe shotgun approach is not in strategy. You are just hoping to get there, right? And even if you get there, it's just like winning a lottery ticket. I always quote this example, like there are lots of, especially in US, like pretty much all the states have lottery tickets and they have winners. But they even after winning the lotteries, they don't turn out to be entrepreneurs. They end up being in the same place after a few years.
yeah, no, exactly. It's I think you made a comment about strategy. I think strategy becomes even more as important, if not more important. And the lack of strategy shows itself very quickly in this new world. So that again is again back to the shifting farther and farther upstream. Product and strategy are fundamental, and knowing what you're doing, knowing why you're doing it, all the way through the system is to me has always been more important than how. And so the why is the why and connecting with the users. I would much rather go slow producing a product that is needed than go fast producing crap. And unfortunately,
Yep.
we're gonna see a lot of the later from because it's enabled, and people we are so fixated and many times on velocity and volume of output rather than on getting the right products out there that are crisp and useful.
Absolutely right. So, I guess you are saying that think about the outcomes, look at the outcomes that you want to achieve rather than, velocity and output. You can get that, but will it take you towards your outcome or not? Just like you are driving Ferrari, but where are you going?
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. The Ferrari's a joy card. You can drive it anywhere and have fun with it, right? But if you want to, either you want to race it, you got to have a goal, and you got to, you got to drive in a very precise way, and that's how you win. Or if you want to get someplace, you got to figure out how you're going to get there in the Ferrari, and if you're going across, in many places you can't drive the Ferrari any faster. In fact, maybe even slower. Some places because you drive it too fast over
Right.
road bumps, you may do more damage. Right? So, yeah.
Absolutely correct. Todd, we have seen this industry for close to, I have seen it for more than 25 years. We have seen it for more than 40 years. I believe there were two roles that were very common to all the companies, startups, or mid-size, pretty much everywhere. Those roles were product management and product management people. Um, I guess they were the backbone of creating lots of product which is out there, and they don't get their due credit for that even today. But pretty much all the companies I have encountered, they had these roles and still have these roles. I mean, even with this AI thing coming into picture, what's your take on these roles, these product management or project management roles? Like where it is going, it is still relevant, I guess, but how it is changing and where it is going.
Yeah, so I think both of those roles are still going to be needed. They will shift, they will change in many ways. I think as they always have, right? I think there have been some major shifts in the early day, in the sort of more waterfall days. Those were all viewed as, we're going to define it up front, and then the project managers will make sure it happens, right? And so the product manager defines it, and then the project manager is responsible for delivering against what the vision was, exactly what the spec was. Agility changed that game by saying, okay, we're going to have a vision, we're going to understand, try to understand what the customer needs, and then we're going to deliver in smaller chunks with feedback loops to help us revise that over time, because we know we've learned enough that we can't get it right up front. And so I think that's still going to be the case. It's interesting. I think I've been seeing lots of postings of people say, "Oh, well, AI is really just enabling us to go back to waterfall, because all we
Right.
need to do is get really good at specifications, and then we just turn on the tap, and AI spits out the answer." And that's an intriguing perspective, but I think we have a history. The software industry is over 50, I don't know, maybe 70 years of history of software development. And Frederick Brooks said it great in the Mythical Man Month. Plan to throw one away. I mean, his point was you can't get it right up front. And I think he also was the chapter called "There's no silver bullets," right? So there is no silver bullet that's going to let us get the spec right, because the spec is impossible to know up front. We can't know precisely because we only discover it through doing it and through getting it in hands. So I think we're not going to see a revision to a linear, define it up front, just spit it out approach. Now, you could get to a point where you do that on a very iterative manner, and if you find that you can continually, after spitting something out from doing this back up front, spitting out, that you can then refine your spec and then spit out a second version. I haven't seen that, and I'm not sure whether we will. I think for anything complicated, that trying to update it and spit out the whole thing at once is going to be more challenging than what we've learned from the Agile approach of developing incrementally. And that's because each increment we learn something new, and I have a feeling that it's just going to be too complicated and probably too expensive to try this big loop rather than the small loop approach to feedback. But I think the product management roles are going to be they're clear. They're obviously going to be even more important. Their role is going to have to change by incorporating AI and into their prototyping and feedback approaches, because the faster we can learn what customers need, the better chance we have of delivering results. I think project managers will clearly change, because they've already started to change from more traditional approach to a more agile approach. Although interestingly, there's still a lot of traditional project managers that haven't really made the jump to agility. And in many cases, if they're working in industries that aren't high uncertainty, the traditional approach can work okay. So, something that's more that has a low uncertainty construction types of projects, but some construction projects have just as much uncertainty as we have in software too. So it really depends on how novel something is, or whether it's a routine activity. So I think we'll see project managers shift also. There'll be a lot less emphasis on ceremonies. There'll still be coordination activities, because still there will be multiple working parts. I mean, what we're seeing a lot of, as we see large scale software, there is a scaling element. And so there's going to be coordination activities. There's going to be looking at dependencies, looking at schedules. I think a lot of the other shift will go away. Traditional project management approaches, as well as really the transition to Scrum. Still, it was anchored in a very much estimate and plan model. So in traditional, it was, we're going to do it, we're going to estimate, and then we're going to estimate, and we're going to plan, and then we're going to hold ourselves accountable to that estimate in some fashion. That's how we're going to determine if we were on budget. And Scrum just said, okay, well, that seems to be required. We're going to do it in smaller chunks, right? So they still have that same thing. I think with the work, as the world moves faster, that structure of planning and estimating will change drastically. We had already found in the Kanban world that many times we can forgo estimation in favor of really looking at actual data and how the flow had been. So we could look at lead times, historical lead times, and use that as a predictor rather than trying to estimate. And so I think that's going to continue, that direction is going to continue. There'll be a lot less emphasis on that upfront planning. We're going to allow the AI to do, the whole flow will be managed and directed differently. So project managers will have to flux with that as the changes happen. Will they have a role? I think they still have a role, because I think there's going to be a need for coordination. Will AI itself start taking on some of the roles that the project managers do? I believe so. I believe that there's a lot of capability within AI that can augment the project manager. I think there will still be humans involved in that coordination activity. When speaking back to my chemical and petroleum engineering background, back in the 90s, we were going through and automating a lot of plants. And the chemical engineering joke at the time with those plants was that all future plants would be, we would remove, they'd be operated by a man and his dog. And the point was that the man was there to feed the dog, and the dog was there to bite the hand of the man if he ever tried to change the equipment. So that was the goal. That was the joke going around. Subsequently, we still have humans and operators in those plants, and and you still have the engineers who are involved in making sure that the working conditions are still accurate. So I think in the future here, yes, we're all these things about AI is going to take these jobs away. I think the jobs will be there, but the roles of the jobs will change for everybody. I think developers' roles will change. I think testing roles will change. I think project management roles will change, and product manager roles will. All of those will change, and we don't know exactly how they're going to change yet, I think, but I think you can sort of see some of it. It's all going to be about leveraging the tool, figuring out how we get flow of the right product, the right solutions out. And that's what's going to shift. I think from the developer perspective, developers will also shift left. Developers will start to be more involved in, be more connected to the domain and more connected to the product. So understanding the business of the company. When I was managing, I frequently had, I had both sides because I was working in a very high, with a lot of other petroleum engineers that were doing software development. So I had people who really understood their product very, very well. But I also took on some other groups, and in those other groups, I had developers who saw themselves more as architects and were actually proud that they didn't know anything about the domain. They said, I'm just writing software. I don't know anything about the domain, but I know my software. I think that there will still probably be a few of those, but the technology, for technology's sake, I think is going to shift because AI does that well. But AI just not handling the connection to the domain as well, and understanding the human connection to the customer. It has some skills in that direction, and I've used them in product development that I've done. Trying to understand how the markets look, and it can do something like that, but it can't do it in the same way. And I think the human roles will do that more, and I think the role of the developer will start to shift in having more emphasis on that bridging to the domain and bridging to the product.
Right. Uh, Todd, coming back to one of the point you mentioned where people are talking about going back to waterfall with the AI, I was looking at few things, which is part of spec-driven development. Some of my customers asked me to train one of their teams in that. So I did some demo project with GitHub Spec Kit, OpenSpec, and Amazon Kero. So what it says that pretty much, let's talk about Spec Kit. So it starts with a constitution. You create a constitution like, what is allowed, what is not allowed, which technology is allowed.
Yeah.
Then you initialize, and then it plans automatically, then create task automatically, and then it does automatically. Now, there are two thoughts on this. Even though you cannot get anything in the one go, you can still get 80% of the, infrastructure or framework ready in one go. Maybe the 20% of the iteration will take pretty much same amount of time. But I was having a conversation with one of my partners, Jaya. See, we had an interesting conversation there, right? With where we were talking that we we said that we are not going to use waterfall because if you decide everything upfront and within some time, 1 month time, by the time you will implement, things will change. In 6 months, things will change. But with AI, whatever you are thinking today, okay, and if you write all those things you are thinking today in a specification file, you'll get the output next day in 1 or 2 days, depending upon how much tokens you want to spend. So that's where I think people are saying that it's a we are bringing back the waterfall. I'm not sure how correct that will be because it is still gonna be iterative. I'm damn sure because even if you go 80%, like if I can give you example of my machine learning projects example, when we were doing the machine learning, going to 60% was very easy, 80% was not that difficult, 80 to 90 was difficult, but 90 to 91 could have taken 6 months, and beyond that it's just like we are struggling. So I see something similar with AI. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think you get to 80, getting to 80% is actually really, it feels rewarding, right? But
Yeah.
as I think again, I don't know where the mantra in the software industry used to be, the first 90% takes 90% of the budget, and the next 10% takes the next 90% of the budget, right? So it's getting to that final product is way more expensive than we think. So it is a little bit of Pareto principle coming here, right? So you feel like, and this is one of the things that people who don't understand software have a hard time believing, because they say, well, yeah, but I saw it and it worked, right? But it doesn't do everything.
Yeah, it is.
Doesn't do everything. It doesn't do everything that's important. And if you try to get that to a custom, that may work if you don't plan to use it much. But if you try to use it as our customers try to use it, they're looking for 100% solution. So I think there's a couple of things that you brought in there. I think one is getting to that 80% is fast. Getting that getting to 90% is hard. and then getting that last step is really, really hard, right? And it may not ever be that you can fully do that in a only. I mean, I think you're always going to have humans involved in the whole cycle, right? It'll be humans that are leveraging AI tooling and then figuring out how to use the whole collective to get to the finish line.
Right.
You did make one other comment about, well, we had this. So that's there's a thinking that, oh, the reason waterfall fails is because things change over the timeline of the development. And yes, they do. But I think actually the bigger problem than that is that we can't know, even if they don't change, even if the market conditions don't change, we don't understand them completely. We don't understand what the customer really needs. And we don't know it's not because it changed, it's only because by the time, through the process of developing it and giving them something, they say, no, that's not what I really wanted. I know it's what I asked for, but it's not what I really need. What I really need is something to do this. Right? So, and we still, I think that's sort of an intrinsic uncertainty that is not discoverable. There are intrinsic uncertainties that are not discoverable up front. There are some which are discoverable up front, and you want to try to look at that. But there are many uncertainties that are not discoverable up front. We just don't know until we get it out there. And then we learn. And that learning is the key part of how quickly do we adapt to that learning. And our ability to learn faster is really our competitive edge. So that's why I think the smaller scale, it might be that you get to the 80, you do something and say, okay, just give me the 80% solution, right? That gives you the framework from which you can learn.
Right.
And then you might be doing it all over again and doing it in a different way. I don't really know how this is going to evolve, but I do know that nothing's going to change the fundamental uncertainties, right?
I'm sorry. I just remember one thing, when you said whether you want to redo these things again. I'll tell you my own example. Few days back, I was building a website. So I thought, let's ask my Claude to just build a website for me. It's the one of the easiest and less risky thing to do, right? I asked Claude to build a website for me, kind of nerdy website. What Claude gave me was something truly amazing. It was one of the best website that could have been created, but the problem is this is not what I wanted. I do not want a superstar website, right? Because that's not my USP, right? My USP is something different, like the things which I know, the things which I write, the things which I talk about.
Right.
And I was tired of explaining this to the Claude, and effectively it happened that I took the framework from the Claude and ended up writing all the text on my own. Because even after burning all the tokens, it's not that there was anything wrong in that. It was good, it was amazing, but it
Yeah.
was not what I wanted. So
Right.
that's where the difference comes in. I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, exactly. No, it wasn't what you really wanted, and you didn't know to ask for what you really wanted until you saw it.
Right.
And then once you knew what you wanted, trying to reset to get it to give you what you wanted was hard because it comes anchored. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So it gets proud of what it does for one, in some ways.
Yeah, and it says sorry so many times that sometimes it feels like, I'm sorry, I couldn't understand this, I couldn't do it, I'm sorry, I did it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Then you fix it and you get rid of all the previous things. So basically the statements that are coming about me, I mean, even though I know what I want, but it's like oh, somehow maybe my language skills are not as good, but I felt that at some point of time there is the touch is called individual touch, individual founders touch, companies touch, is something that is not there in this generative AI models, which is trying to give you the best. Sometimes you don't need the best, you need what's appropriate for you.
No, exactly. You need something that's aligned with what you're trying
Yes.
to do, and is designed for simplicity, right? And it gives you exactly what you are looking for. So, and those are really hard to disambiguate. So, the ambiguity in the specification is always going to be there, which is why the whole concept, I think, of trying to get that right up front, just it's too much wishful thinking. When you actually do it, you realize, no, it can't be done. And Frederick Brooks was right from way back when.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was right actually. So yeah. Uh, Todd, if I want to define agility in today's world, what is that gonna be? Because in terms of not only the work, also from the budget point of view, uh, like we had a story points, right, or
Yeah,
t-shirt size, right? There is no token points as of now. How much token cost will be. Like people may
right.
come up with something like this, but how is the agility will be defined today? Will it be defined by your optimal use of AI, or will it be defined by doing things just fast enough, or will it be defined by learning fast enough?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm gonna go back to sort of how I defined agility today, and how I've sort of always defined agility, which I think probably differs from the vast majority of how people look at define agility. To many people, it's, well, is it aligned to the Agile Manifesto, or is it following a particular Agile framework? Um, my approach is neither of the above. In my way, um, agility is really defined in the eyes of the customer, and
Okay.
every customer has a different definition of what they mean by agility. And our role is to figure out what their definition of agility is that's contextual to them. Okay. So this shifts it all around. It's no longer a developer led. It's neither developer nor process oriented. It's business oriented. And that's what agility is, after all. Right? Am I able to adjust to the changes that are appropriate for my conditions? So
Right.
for some people, some companies, that they're not, they have a fairly predictable world. They have they're not trying to go into a high uncertainty field. To them, agility means something vastly different. You know, it may mean to them more about efficiency, right? It means, or ability to work with, like you say, making good use of the money they spend. So
Right.
that may be their, whereas in a startup environment, agility is my ability to learn very fast,
Right.
and learn whether my product is actually meeting, my vision for the product is correct, or whether I need to pivot. So it's the ability to learn rapidly. So I think that's how I define agility, and I think that sustains throughout whatever the underlying means of production is, right? So I think that AI is going to shift that a lot, because it's going to enable us to learn faster. It's going to enable us to find, to do these things, and to be more agile as a result of that. And it's interesting also, the perspective of agility is, we hear all these stories about agile is dead, right? And so what does that really mean? And I so one of the things I did when that started coming out, I went back and looked at a lot of press releases from tech layoffs. So there were a lot of tech layoffs a couple of years back, including some layoffs of agile coaches. Some major ones. Capital One had a major layoff of agile coaches, and for the ones that made in fully, I'd say about 50% of those press releases, it contained a comment to some extent like, "We are making these cuts in order to be more agile." So even when they were, and as well, like even Capital One that was cutting Agile coaches said, we still believe in Agile. We just don't think it's the right. We think it needs to be incorporated into our business as a regular approach, which it already has been done. So they didn't feel a need to have an Agile coaching department any longer. So it's not that they think Agile is a bad word. They want it. So they want, but it means something different to every company. And it doesn't usually mean what when we talk about it from a process perspective or a technical perspective, it's not what they're thinking. They're thinking a business perspective. And that's the shift I think that we'll see. And that shift is going to go all the way through. And I think AI is going to be, I think that's one of the reasons why we saw, there's no coincidence to some extent that this idea of Agile is dead corresponded to some extent with the uptick in the AI space. And it's not that AI is killing agility, it's just that AI is changing the game and we don't quite know what that looks like. People don't quite know what it looks like in the, what does agility mean in an AI space? And that's what we're reinventing, I think. And I really do believe that it has a core holding is still going to be the approach we take, because fundamentally we need we have uncertainty and we have to have feedback loops, and those feedback loops are both on the product side and the process improvement side, and that's what agility really is. The core of agility is really those two feedback loops, and if we do that well, then we have great products done well. So we have both effectiveness and efficiency. And that's what I think. That's what really customers. That's what organizations are looking for. Is they want to tame the beast, right? And AI hasn't tamed the beast. AI has just made a bigger beast. so it's going to be even more challenging to tame.
Yeah, even I believe I have worked with some of the agentic systems of late, and you talked about feedback loop. I believe none of the agents will be able to work without these feedback loops. Think about people are coming up with new terms like loop engineering as of today. Effectively, what is that? What is just that you are stating a purpose, you're stating an end goal, and it is iterating through that based on the feedback. Done one step, okay, this is where I am. Okay, this is my feedback. Take another step. And all the agentic systems, if you ask your agent to do things in one go, 99% of them will fail based on my experience. So they are also, doing to and fro. It's just like lots of feedback they go through to come up with, what exactly is needed. And I think, yeah, agents are also doing things in an agile way.
No, exactly. I think it is core, and we're going to find out how to do it better. And to some extent, to the extent we can incorporate it within the agent, then that's actually good too, right? So,
Right.
I talk about there being the two loops, but really there's loops all over the place. But the two core ones being, product improvement and process improvement, those are fundamental. And I think that's really what people are looking for is how do I tame the beast and get better products that. And a large part of it is that people, we in this high uncertainty, this software development space, many leaders in the organization just don't understand what we do.
Hmm.
So they're always looking for that secret pill that will help them better, figure out are we getting what we need.
Right. Absolutely right. So, Todd, with this, the question comes that do frameworks like Scrum and Kanban, do they still matter in the age of AI, or how do you see them evolving, these frameworks evolving in future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the an interesting one. Um, Clearly, I think the element of the feedback loops is core. So I think that and both Scrum and Kanban have those feedback loops in a different way. They're implemented, different approach. We also have, we could revert to, we had the conversation earlier about, we could revert to a waterfall where we find a way to get those feedback loops in. But I think that's going to be brute force. I expect it to be the the waterfall. There might be a waterfallish approach to getting a rapid prototype, but I think it's still going to be these approaches are going to be applicable. And I have my questions really about how much of Scrum would survive. I know the keepers of Scrum are going to tell you that Scrum is even more important today that than it was, because with AI, it's you still see it that. I don't necessarily see it the same way. I think that what enabled Scrum to become very popular, I think, was that it's offered the same type of paradigm I talked about earlier, where the plan and estimate paradigm was changed from a big upfront plan to a small plan, and
Right.
that meant a very minor transition for the project management side in that sense. We're still doing things, and there's still something to anchor on there. Um, and then I think the other element that, and this is the unfortunate part of Scrum, is that most of the things that stuck about Scrum were all the mechanical things, right? Am I following the ceremonies? Am I doing Scrum, right? And our track record with Scrum is relatively poor. Jeff Sutherland, who's one of the founders of Scrum, is quoted as saying that 58% of Scrum implementations are late, over budget, and with unhappy customers. So our track record of success is not great, and that, I think, largely because people are just following, and it's not because they're not following it; they're following it exactly. They're following all of, but they're not getting the results. What they're not getting is the feedback loops, and they're not getting the things that really matter. So I think that Scrum is going to find more challenge in how are any of these things actually valid. I don't think that I don't see that the planning and estimating makes a lot of sense in a really heavily AI influenced world. I don't think that it added. We have evidence that it really didn't add value. All the story pointing and velocity didn't really actually add value before. And in the AI world, it's going to be even less valuable. It's going to be less important. So I think the tracking mechanism will shift. I think that things, I am, I guess, strongly biased by the Kanban method, but I think really the essence of the Kanban method has held its time really since, over the last 20 years since David Anderson first implemented it. And because it's based on the core principles of flow, and so flow and evolutionary change. And so, given that we haven't really changed that much, there will be some things in the mechanics that aren't as critical, and we'll back away from some of those. But I think the essence of continuous flow, linkage with automation and DevOps, Kanban fits very naturally into a DevOps world because it's all based on flow. So I think those types of things, whether we call it Kanban or we just start calling it, AI flow or whatever, I mean, it is. I think they're still going to be there. The key will be those two feedback loops. How well are we adapting to learn about our product through similar approaches to lean startup approaches of getting that feedback loop in there, and then also the process improvement feedback to figure out how can we get better at what we do. I think those are going to stay. And so, so I think that when I was heard a developer talking about what he was very much in favor, very favorable towards agility, but he said he wasn't using any of the overhead. I said, so what you basically did is you're using the feedback loops without anything else. And he said, yep, that's pretty much it.
Wow,
So
that's great.
so he was doing it an individual developer prototyping some things, but he was very familiar with Agile, and he put it in his presentation. He had put that he was sort of agile. He was agile without doing all the ceremonies, but he was keeping the feedback loops and learning, and that was what's important. So
Yeah.
how fast we can learn is still going to be fundamental.
Yeah, that's correct, I guess. Todd, there was a time when people wanted to share things like how big my company is, how big my team is. Of late, I'm seeing a different trend where, all the CXOs also trying to say that, we are doing things with less number of people now. So
Yeah.
everybody want to say that, we have a small team or maybe a small company also. I'm wondering, are we going to see a phase where um, we are changing from bigger is better to smaller is smarter kind of thing?
I wouldn't be surprised if some of that happens. I think there's a lot of, there has been a lot of inefficiency in our world. And that
Right.
inefficiency, I always say the joke that if suppose you're decoupled from the business, right? And so you're not really tied to the results of things, and that's unfortunately the way many IT organizations are set up. So if your goal as a CIO is to have the largest department in that's possible, then the best way to get that is to be as inefficient as you can get away with.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, because if you're as inefficient as you can get away with, you need more people. And so,
Right.
you say, okay, I got a big organization. What are they doing? Well, maybe they could get the same thing done with 1/10 of the people. I don't know, right? But I see a lot of these inefficiencies happening, and oftentimes it's also in the name of getting, definitely we saw this in the heavyweight waterfall approaches, where lots and lots of time spent on documentation and not very much time spent on delivery. And you see that in the look at the quoted rates of how fast people were able to generate. Now this is just looking at output, but lines of code, things like that. The metrics are really showing not much was getting done at many of these places. And so most of my life has been in product companies, and product companies you can't have that, because product companies you have those, and this is because you have a feedback loop from the customer. So the feedback loop is from the customers showing up in sales, and your budget is not what you can justify. Your budget is based on how much your sales are, and so you've got a direct feedback. You're going to be as efficient as you can in these smaller companies. So, we were producing, felt like very high rates of productivity because we were, comparatively to what I was seeing happening when you don't have that feedback loop, if you don't have that connection to the business. So I think AI is going to increase that, and so I think you're going to see is that we are going to get more efficient. But I also think, in addition to being more efficient, I think there's going to be a short term and then a longer term behavior. I think what's going to happen in short term, we might see some contraction. May see some layoffs in the tech field. We may see some shifting of roles, and I think overall team sizes will decrease because they'll be augmented by AI. Now we may have more teams, so we have smaller teams, but more of them. Not sure. Not sure that's necessary, because actually that's one of the things that we differ from in the Kanban space. We don't mind having larger teams if that larger team actually helps with the dependency management. So you
Right.
don't want to artificially create boundaries that create more dependencies. That's what I think one of the fallacies of the small team model is, sometimes feeling like, was one of my early teams, they were 14 people. And I was thinking, well, should I split this 14-person team into two teams? And there was no natural break point, and doing so would have just created dependencies that made no sense. And so there was really very little overhead to running it as a 14-person team. And I stuck with that model, and it worked really well. So I sort of, that was my early learning, that team size is a lot less important than we make it be. It's a matter of, are you managing that team size appropriately, right? Now, if you're into micromanagement, then the larger the team makes it harder to micromanage, right? So you get put more work on it. So we were handling that very well, and it worked really well. So larger teams can be done, and in Kanban world, we often can. I think when David Anderson first started Kanban, his teams, the group that was the service that was being managed was maybe up to 50 people. So larger groups can be managed as long as you focus on the work and less on the people.
Right.
Not that you're ignoring the people, but you're not micromanaging the people. You're micromanaging the work. You're trying to figure out, well, how is this work flowing, and from that. So I think the age of AI is going to shift a lot of that. There's going to be a lot more. It's harder to hide out in the and be low efficiency. So and people will be on the lookout for that. Um, I do think over time what will happen is that there may be a short-term contraction where and then over time we're going to realize, oh, we have this AI is enabling products that are hugely valuable, and we're going to have an insatiable demand for the products. So there'll be even more demand for the products, and there'll be a resurgence of this. So I think the overall roles, I'm not worried that there's going to be huge long-term layoffs. There'll be some learning exercises. There'll be some challenges, but I think long-term we will still need IT professionals to do the work. And the shift there will be that they're going to be doing more work. They'll be much more productive with the AI, and they'll also be their role will have shifted. There'll be a predominant the new roles. You'll be the ones who can actually connect to the business, the closer they can connect to the business and the domain, and help guide the AI to do the heavy lifting. And then there will be also the those that are sort of making sure that the getting that last 10% is also going to be a key role.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So I think the crux of what you are saying is that in the future, teams will be more. They will not be isolated from the business outcomes. They will have to work along with those business outcomes, because if you are
Yeah.
not, those inefficiencies will be visible, right? Yeah. So Todd, every time I talk to you, I learn a lot of new things. But before we close this call, I have just one last question to you. Lots of people who are coming out of college and are looking for job in IT. Some of them are doing it, but they are very young, in their 20s or early 30s. Based on your experience, is there anything you'd like to tell them?
Yeah. So I think you stick at it. I mean, I said I think that those coming out and that enjoy working in IT, and I think there will be some challenging times coming. I think certainly is certainly I would say don't fight AI. AI is going to be here. It's just too obvious that there's value to it. So I think but that's usually a good. I mean, those people in the 20s and 30s are probably on top of it already, because it's probably more the older people that are trying to fight it more. But I think that stick up with it, keep up with technology. It will all change. It's changed a lot in my career, and it will continue to change. So stay with it. Try to get really good at discovering which ones are fads and which ones are real, because many of the technology shifts, there are fads and that aren't really there, and there's some that are downright real, and we have to keep up with those. So there's going to be a lot of learning. Continue to learn. You went to college to learn, but your job is really a continuous learning activity, and so that's what you advise, to continue to learn. I think the other thing that I've re-emphasized, I keep harping on, is that I do think technology roles will shift, and they will shift. They will shift closer and closer to the business. So it'll be the shift in that direction. Get better at connecting to the business. Align. I mean, it may be aligning with a particular business that you like. So you're a technologist on one hand, but find a business area that you really like and try to really specialize in that business area, because I think that the roles of the future will have shifted in that direction, where there's less of an emphasis on the technical details and more of an emphasis on how do I connect this together, staying technical. So knowing the technology and being a little bit. It's a little bit of an evolution of the business analyst role, but I think more of learning some of those business analysis skills as a developer not necessarily becoming a business analyst, but really a technical person who really understands a particular domain, a particular area, and can guide the AI appropriately. So get good at that. Get good at understanding what AI can do for you and what it's limited at, and having that empathy with the customer, the end customer, how that connects. So I think those would be the types of things that I would be recommending to someone that's early in their career. And then the people, even though we're going to have AI in there, people are always going to be part of the equation. Develop human skills, interaction, coordination, and communication. Those areas are still going to be strong. So, I think I still have a positive outlook long term on the role of IT specialists. I think there will be some interesting challenges in the short term. I think early career people will probably survive that easier because they'll be prepared to what I've seen is they're very enthusiastic about how AI can work for them. So.
Okay. Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you so much for sharing all the wisdom. And as I said, I learned a lot from you, and I'm sure people who are going to watch this podcast will definitely learn a lot from you. Thank you for giving us time on Sunday morning. I know it's early there. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Daksh. It was really fun. I enjoy it, and hopefully people find it useful.
Sure.